This story still gives me nightmares every time I think about it, and honestly, I'm lucky to be alive. I've never been so scared in my life, and I'm not sure if I'll ever feel normal again. So, this happened last summer when my wife Maria and I decided to go on vacation to Serbia. Neither of us had ever been to the Balkans before, but we'd heard good things about Belgrade, the food, the history, the nightlife. It sounded like an adventure, something different from the usual beach holidays. We booked a week-long stay, rented a little apartment through a local agency, and everything was going perfectly at first. The city was incredible, beautiful architecture, and people were nice, and we spent most days walking around, exploring, just enjoying our time together. But things took a turn after the third day. That evening, we decided to go out for dinner at a place that wasn't far from our apartment. We had a couple of drinks with dinner, nothing crazy, and then on the way back, Maria mentioned she wanted to stop by a bakery we'd passed earlier to get something sweet. I wasn't really in the mood for more food, so I told her I'd meet her back at the apartment, and I headed back alone. It was maybe a 10-minute walk, but it felt longer. The streets were quiet, almost deserted. I remember checking my phone and noticing it was later than I thought, just after midnight. The air felt off. You know that gut feeling when something's not right? I shrugged it off and kept walking, thinking I was just tired. Then, I noticed a car slowing down as it passed me. I didn't think much of it at first. People drive weird all the time, especially at night. But it kept going slow, matching my pace. I tried not to make eye contact, just picked up my pace a little, but the car stopped about a block ahead of me. That's when I started to feel real fear creep in. I crossed the street, but no sooner did I make it to the other side than I heard footsteps behind me. Fast footsteps. I barely had time to react before I felt something hard slam into the back of my head. The world went dark. When I woke up, I was on a cold, rough surface. The smell of mildew and damp air hit me before I even opened my eyes. I was lying on the floor, my arms and legs bound tight. It took a second for everything to sink in, and when it did, I felt a surge of panic. The room was dim, with just a sliver of light peeking under a heavy door. My head was pounding, and my mouth was dry. I panicked. I couldn't remember what happened or how I got there. All I knew was that I needed to get out. I strained against the ropes, but they were tight, cutting into my skin. I tried calling out, but my voice came out weak. No one answered. It was just me, alone, in that dark room. Time passed, I don't know how long. Could have been minutes or hours. Then I heard something. Footsteps. Heavy boots on the floor above me. I froze, holding my breath, listening. The footsteps grew closer, and then I heard the door above creak open. Light flooded the room, and a figure appeared at the top of a staircase, a man, his face hidden by shadows. He didn't say anything. Just stood there, watching me. I felt this cold wave of terror wash over me. My mind was racing. Who was he? What did he want? Was I going to die down here? I asked him what he wanted, begged him to let me go, but he didn't respond. After what felt like an eternity, he turned and left, locking the door behind him. That was the first climax point. I knew then that I was in deep trouble. The next few hours were a blur of panic and desperation. I kept trying to wriggle free, trying to figure out how to escape, but the ropes were too tight. At some point, exhaustion took over, and I must have passed out again because the next thing I knew, I woke up to the sound of something scraping on the floor. This time, it wasn't footsteps, it was something being dragged. I turned my head, trying to see in the dim light, and I saw a wooden chair being pulled across the room by the same man from earlier. He set it down a few feet away from me and sat, just staring at me again. The silence was unbearable. Then he spoke, but not in English. I didn't understand a word, and that made it even more terrifying. His voice was low, gravelly. He said something and waited, like he was expecting a response. When I didn't answer, he stood up abruptly and stormed out of the room again, leaving me alone in that suffocating darkness. I knew I didn't have much time. I had no idea what he was planning, but whatever it was, I knew it wasn't good. My wrists were bleeding from trying to pull free, but the pain didn't matter. I just needed to survive. Somehow, through pure adrenaline, I managed to loosen one of the ropes. It wasn't much, but it gave me enough room to slip one hand free. My heart was pounding as I worked quickly to untie my legs. Every second felt like an eternity. When I was finally free, I got to my feet, but I was weak and unsteady. There was no window in the room, just that door. I had no choice. I had to go through it. I crept up the stairs, listening for any sound. My hand shook as I turned the knob, praying it wasn't locked. Miraculously, it wasn't. The door creaked open, and I found myself in a narrow hallway. The smell hit me first, damp, musty, like the place hadn't been touched in years. I kept moving, my heart racing, every creak of the floorboards sending a jolt of fear through me. I made it to the end of the hallway, where I saw another door. Just as I reached for it, I heard something behind me. The man was back. I didn't think. I ran. Threw the door open and sprinted down another set of stairs. My lungs were burning, but I didn't stop. I heard his footsteps pounding behind me, getting closer. I don't know how, but I managed to get outside, into the alley behind what looked like an old, abandoned building. I didn't stop running until I found a group of people at a nearby bar. I burst in, gasping for air, shouting for help. They didn't understand English, but the fear on my face must have been enough. They called the police, and an hour later, I was safe. But that man, they never found him. That vacation ruined me. Maria still doesn't know all the details. I didn't want to scare her more than she already was when I disappeared for half a night. I just told her I got mugged and knocked out. But the truth is something I can barely handle myself. I'm haunted by the thought that someone out there wanted me dead, or worse. And whoever that man was, he's still out there. I haven't been the same since.